how the life influences the making of specific violin makers of the past, maybe even nowadays. Stay tuned and I will tell you about this sparkling and spicy argument today. Hello back again. This is Edgar from Cremona, Italy, and today we talk about Carlo Antonio Testore. A maker, when I heard this name, I always thought, wow, what a fancy, nice name. A little bit like Galliano. Galliano, the entire family, I think is, this is very sparkling. For me, it's something, and then when I saw these instruments, I always saw a lot of things to look at, all these tool marks, this not very straightforward, continuous progress in work, make the whole thing a little bit more interesting. Testore, Guarnieri in 11 years created all this. Guarnieri, where they talked that they went into the jail and then his father not having money and then in 11 years it was... All these things are definitely influencing the way how you do the rest. A little bit how you do anything, you do everything. Stradivari was a very clear, straight line forward person, developed the style, didn't change too much, and over the years then became what he did in his golden period. Great sounding instruments, but if you think about Stradivari, of course you say the best sounding model. No doubt about it. But it's not that you have all these choices at a certain level of making, which we are into. You can detect the difference between an Isaïe, Lord Wilton, Heifetz, Sainton, Ole Bull, and you know, you have all these models, famous models from Guarnieri, and every model has its own style because he created his style. When we talk about Testore, I always thought Carlo Antonio Testore with his nice brand mark on the back is the most important, but actually was not this important. Then Carlo Giuseppe was actually more important. When we see these makers popping out from Milan and they made instruments which were quite affordable and then sometimes very super exciting and then low profile without the purfling to save time, money and whatever, and not so fancy looking wood, the origin of that is actually found at their master. And if we go into their master's history, it gets sparkling here. This is the Grancino. You have their Giovanni Grancino, 1637 to 1709. And he ran his Giovanni Grancino together with Francesco. Then at a certain point, they had two separate workshops. And then from Giovanni, he passed away. And then his son, Giovanni, the same name, took over the shop and started to work. Now, years go by and we're talking about 1673 born, and then he worked until at least we know about 1726, something like this. The sparkling thing about this Giovanni is that he actually, in a fight, in a duel, I don't know how you call that in English, he killed a colleague, another violin maker. I don't know the name, but at least it was a colleague in his trade. He killed that person and then was judged to death. But he was not prosecuted to death, but he was absolved and returned back to his original profession, violin maker. Now, what happened? His making, if you look at the instruments in Grancino family, then you see that this Giovanni didn't use any more so sparkling, nice flamed wood and was actually going to a very cheap edition of violin making, facing financial problems. Things like this have been transmitted, okay? And this makes it interesting because he is actually the master where the Testore get in and learned from him the violin making. So it could be that, you know, you see his master where he got the wood from, a lousy wood and whatever, and did it really quick and fast and tack and the next one, and you know. And this kind of making in that years has been transmitted to the Testore family. So there was Carlo Giuseppe Testore and then Carlo Antonio Antonio Testore, okay? And this way of running a business that way, probably aside to them, there were these other makers who were doing beautiful things for more wealthier people. And sometimes in the making of the Testore, you sometimes see a very fancy, super nice looking cello. I just found something in the auction book of Sotheby's, 4 Centuries of Italian Violin Making, where they even say that this cello, it might have been that they were increased to make something very fancy and nice and beautiful by a consistent financial payment. So then they made it very nice. So they were really good in, but it was just a financial problem. They were making and just the next, and then you would say in those years everything was easy, but people were always and are still always under financial pressure. It's a more a way of living which you get introduced and shown by your origin, by your family, and then you do it the same way. Yeah? And even if your parents are not here anymore, you still continue doing it that way in order to fulfill somehow this concept, and the financial education is transmitted from generation to generation, even in those years, even nowadays. You have to know that. Yeah? So this Testore is actually interesting because of that. And then his shape of his instruments, and now here I made actually a copy of a Testore where I made a video of, where I went to Venice to see it. The reason that I made it is because it was so strange looking. Such a strange shape. One see so far that one corner is so out that almost it's touching the flat area which connects the upper and the lower. If you would put it on a flat area, this is almost this corner. This is so much like a Christmas tree standing out that you just say, wow, how could you do this? These F-holes, at a certain point, cutting an F-hole like this, I probably would have quit with violin making, but they just continue doing it, and it's so off of what we are used to that I remember the first time I was doing this one. This is like 15-20 years ago, and there was Hiroki Ishii from Kyoto, a school friend. I made the violin making school with him together, looked at it and was laughing about this model. What an ugly model, and you're making it. And then when it was ready, he had the chance to listen to the violin, and he was impressed, but at that time the violin was already sold. And then I made immediately the next one and sold, and the next one and sold. And I made 50, at least 50, maybe even more times this Testore mallet. And it's interesting that even my students now, just in order that things are going to be transmitted, are making it. All these makers who worked in my workshop are making it, and sometimes on the internet I see a Testore model, and then I look at it and it's this model, it's mine. Yeah, I'm not jealous that they use it. I think it's interesting. It's somehow, it's getting transmitted like this, what I started because of fun. And it's definitely not equilibrated and beautiful for a, let's say, Cremonese Stradivarian beauty looking instrument or a rough Guarnieri. It is completely off all this Cremonese tradition, 70 kilometers or 50 miles northwest of Cremona. There's Milan. At the time it was a small village, now it's the biggest or the second biggest town in Italy. At the time, information couldn't be passed by a quick photograph taken with your cell phone, but they had to make drawings with a chalk and things like this. Yeah, so This here is now made by Marco Dotti. I also think that it sounds pretty good because it has this Testore crunchiness and focus, and is projecting super good. It's on the focused and sharper sound-wise edge, but very ideal for soloists who want to get through, want to be heard, but easy to play, good projection, very Italian, and without purfling on the back, with this brand mark on the button. And then yeah, even we make even this carving on the tailpiece, just because it's like in the book of where we make the copy from. But it's just interesting. Also the scroll, this long pack box, this tiny small scroll. Yeah, I think this is cute. Yeah, we enjoy it very much. So you like to watch this video? Yeah, put a lot of effort in it in order that you subscribe. Okay, so in case you didn't subscribe it, now take your finger and subscribe to this channel. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.